The first report transmitted across the interstellar neutral zone lasted exactly 7 seconds. 7 seconds of scrambled visuals, clipped breathing, and one final, trembling sentence. They're human, requesting immediate extraction, do not engage. Then the feed dissolved into static. At first, the Galactic Directorate treated it as a technical malfunction. Ships malfunction all the time. Patrol units vanish. Space is big, hostile, and indifferent. But a few minutes later, the Valerix cruiser Kethvorn sent a silent emergency ping, no voice, no crew logs, no standard distress pattern. And then its transponder winked out as well. The Directorate's High Council convened in a panic, political analysts whispered about new weapons, rogue star beasts, or another breach in the unstable sectors. No one dared utter the more terrifying possibility. That the vanished units had encountered humans. Not diplomats. Not merchants. Combatants. Human warriors, the kind who only appeared in ancient war records, the kind entire civilizations had spent centuries pretending no longer existed. That night, as hyperspace lanes locked down and fleets braced for escalation, a single covert Directorate operative watched the chaos unfold from a hidden vantage point. Agent Kavariel Threx, a veteran intelligence officer whose specialty was human behavioral studies no alien wished to revisit. Because Threx knew something was wrong, deeply wrong, with the way the cruiser's signal had sounded. The fear in the officer's voice was unmistakable. And Threx had heard that same fear only once before. On the day humanity nearly tore the galaxy in half. Now the reports were beginning again. But what no alien knew, what no council committee had predicted, was that on a quiet, unremarkable blue planet circling an unremarkable star, a small human special operations team was already preparing for a mission that would pull them directly into the center of the Directorate's growing terror. Fort Braddock, Nevada, Earth. Captain Evan Marshall ran a hand across his face as he scanned the classified brief projected over the table. He'd been on dozens of black-budget missions, too many to count, but this one felt different. And not in a good way. Across from him, Lieutenant Danielle Danny Holt leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "These aren't the usual coordinates," she muttered. "This is outer belt territory. Fringe space. Nobody goes there." "Someone did," Marshall said. "And now we're going too." The lights flickered as the briefing room sealed itself. Command had activated full isolation protocols. Major Colton Reyes, their commanding officer, stepped inside, his expression grave. "I'm going to give it to you straight. We intercepted an alien distress signal. And it mentions humans." The room fell silent. "Sir," Danny said slowly, "there are no U.S. assets in that region of space. No coalition deployments. Nothing." "We know," Reyes replied. "That's what scares us. Someone out there is impersonating human operatives, or worse, using tech stolen from one of our black sites." Marshall's stomach tightened. "And you want us to track it?" "We're sending you because you're the only team with exposure to Valerix contact zones. You know their patterns. Their weapons. Their diplomacy style." Danny snorted softly. "Diplomacy. Right." Reyes ignored the comment. "Mission objective is simple: infiltrate the last known coordinates of the alien distress signal, identify what they encountered, and report back. Do not initiate conflict unless absolutely necessary." But something in Reyes's eyes said he already knew conflict was inevitable. Marshall exhaled slowly. "We leave at 0300? Midnight," Reyes corrected. "Your wheels up in 60 minutes. Valerix outer sectors, aboard the destroyed cruiser Kethvorn." Agent Threx drifted silently through the shattered remains of the Valerix cruiser, his armored suit magnetizing him to the warped hull. The ship was torn open as if something had ripped through the alloy plating from the inside. Not explosives. Not lasers. Force. Raw force. The kind humans were infamous for. Threx activated his holo recorder. Damage analysis, extreme internal structural compromise. Signs of close quarters combat. Possible blade wounds, carbon scoring inconsistent with energy weapons. As he floated deeper inside, he noticed something else: marks gouged directly into the bulkheads. No alien species carved patterns like these. Because they weren't patterns at all. They were tally marks. Rows of them. A cold chill seeped through Threx's bones. The ancient human warriors, those from the Dead War era, had once used such marks to count enemy kills. Impossible, Threx told himself. Pure superstition. Humans in modern eras were peaceful compared to their ancestors. They negotiated. They built. They explored. The past was dead. But the tally marks continued: 20, 40, 60, etched with precision, each stroke deliberate. Then, deeper inside the ship's dim central hallway, Threx found something worse. A message. Written not in paint. Written in alien blood. Return to sender. Threx's breath seized. Something was out here. Something wearing the face of humanity. Something the galaxy had spent thousands of years pretending was gone forever. He terminated his scan and prepared to retreat when his suit sensors suddenly flared bright red. Human life signs detected. 3 signatures. Approaching fast. Earth Launch Bay Gamma. As the stealth shuttle roared to life, Marshall checked his sidearm, his knives, his exopack. Danny adjusted the seals on her tactical armor. Their third operative, Corporal Nathan Briggs, a quiet soldier with unnerving precision, powered up the ship's targeting interface. Briggs broke the silence first. Anyone else feel like we're heading into a trap? Marshall didn't answer. Because he felt it too. Danny gave a forced grin. Relax, Briggs. What's the worst thing aliens can do that humans haven't already done to each other? Not comforting, Briggs muttered. The shuttle door closed. Engines engaged. Earth shrank behind them. As they accelerated toward the jump point, Marshall stared out at the stars. Something about this mission gnawed at him, like he was being pulled into a story that had already begun long before he arrived. And he wasn't sure he liked the role he'd been cast in. Especially the part where alien distress signals were literally begging others not to report human combatants. The ship hit hyperfold. The universe inverted. And the nightmare waiting on the other side opened its arms. Valeric's cruiser ruins, same moment. Agent Threx tried to hide. Too late. The humans, Marshall, Danny, and Briggs, breached the cruiser's torn hull in a flash of sparks and steel. Threx froze. 3 silhouetted figures stood in the dust and drifting debris. Their posture. Their armor. Their cold, assessing gazes. Exactly like the legends. Exactly like the monsters from Valeric's nightmares. But these humans weren't here to kill him. Not yet. Marshall swept his weapon toward Threx. Identify yourself. Now. Threx raised his hands, trembling. I am Directorate Agent Threx of the Valerics. I am not hostile. Then explain, Danny said, stepping closer, eyes sharp. Explain why an alien cruiser sent a distress signal about humans. Explain the blood on the walls. And explain those tally marks. Threx swallowed hard. Because, he whispered, voice breaking, you are not the first humans I have seen here. Marshall's eyes narrowed. Meaning what? Threx pointed deeper into the shattered ship. That there is something in this sector wearing your faces. And every species that has encountered them is dead. A silence heavier than the vacuum around them settled. And in the distance, from somewhere inside the darkness of the cruiser, something moved. Something that sounded almost human. But not quite. The sound came again, soft, rhythmic, almost like a person dragging their fingertips across metal. Not claws. Not tools. Fingers. Human fingers. Captain Evan Marshall swung his rifle toward the darkness. Lights. Danny Holt tapped her wrist module, a trio of shoulder-mounted beams ignited, slicing through dust and floating debris. The interior of the destroyed cruiser lit up in eerie streaks, twisted corridors, exposed wiring, and splashes of dried alien blood. Agent Threx retreated behind them instinctively, as if their very shadows offered better protection than the entire Galactic Directorate ever could. "We should leave this place," he whispered. "This ship is cursed." Briggs scanned the shadows. "A ship doesn't get cursed," he muttered. Something did this. Something living. Something moved again, this time closer. Danny signaled silently, ready weapons. Marshall stepped forward, calm but alert. "Show yourself," he called. Hands visible. For a moment, only the drifting dust answered. Then something stepped into the light. At first glance, it was human, broad-shouldered, muscular, dressed in tactical armor that looked like an archaic version of Earth military gear. But its movements were wrong, too smooth, too balanced, like every joint rotated on invisible servos. Its face was expressionless, eyes vacant. A human shell with everything human missing. Briggs swore under his breath. "Sir, you seeing this?" Marshall nodded slowly. "Danny, facial scan." Danny raised her wrist module and the beams tightened. A holographic grid mapped across the stranger's face. "Biometric match," her device reported. She stared. "That's impossible." "What?" Marshall demanded. "It's a match," she said. "To a soldier who died 50 years ago. Sergeant Noah Carden. Kia during the Polaris collapse. His DNA profile is identical." Threx inhaled sharply. "Then the stories are true." The soldier shell didn't react. It didn't blink. It didn't speak. It just watched them. Marshall aimed directly at its chest. "Identify yourself." No answer. Briggs took a cautious step forward. The soldier shell mirrored him with perfect symmetry. Marshall's pulse quickened. "Stop. Don't move." It stopped. But not because of the command. Because something else began moving behind it. Multiple things. Shapes stepped out of the corridor's darkness, 5, 10, 12 of them. All wearing mismatched human armor from different eras. All with different faces. All with the same empty, mechanical stillness. And every one of them carried tally marks carved into their armor plates. Danny whispered, "Holy hell." Threx trembled visibly. "We must flee. These are the replicated." Marshall had read about the replicated old Directorate ghost stories of a force that copied the galaxy's most dangerous species and used them to wage perfect wars. But those were myths. Campfire tales. They weren't supposed to be real. Briggs inhaled. "Sir? Orders?" Before Marshall could answer, the soldier shell in front stepped forward and tilted its head, as if analyzing him. And then it spoke. In a voice so hollow it barely qualified as sound. "Authentic human combatants detected." Danny muttered, "That's not a sentence that ever leads somewhere good." The soldier shell continued. "Primary directive, evaluate threat level." Marshall tensed. "We don't want a fight." The creature's head rotated farther than a human neck should allow. "Threat level, maximum." Briggs swore loudly. "Okay, so negotiations off the table." The soldier shells began to advance, their steps synchronized like a single mind. Marshall's instincts screamed. "Fall back. Defensive pattern Delta." The team retreated down the corridor, firing controlled bursts. Bullets pierced synthetic flesh, but the replicated didn't slow. They didn't bleed. They didn't react to pain because they didn't feel any. Danny slammed an explosive charge on a bulkhead. "Get down!" The blast tore the corridor apart, sending metal and debris flying. Smoke filled the chamber. But the replicated walked through it unburned, unbroken, undeterred. Briggs gasped. "They're adapting." The explosion didn't even. A replicated surged forward with impossible speed, tackling Briggs into a wall. His armor absorbed the impact, but the creature's strength was monstrous. Its hand tightened around his visor, trying to crush his helmet. Marshall fired point blank into its spine. The replicated twisted, releasing Briggs, but kept coming. Danny grabbed Briggs by the collar and pulled him back. "We need distance." Marshall nodded. "Threx, route to an escape vector." Threx blinked. "Escape? There is no escape. They always pursue." Marshall grabbed him by the arm. "Then we make one." Deeper inside the cruiser. They moved quickly through ravaged passageways, the replicated echoing behind them like a relentless tide. The ship groaned under its own structural collapse. Sparks rained from shattered conduits above. Threx guided them toward the aft auxiliary hangar. "This way. There is a maintenance airlock. If it is still functional, we might reach open space." Danny scanned behind them. "They're closing fast. 50 meters. 40. Marshall took point, boots pounding against metal. "Briggs, status?" Briggs shook off the impact. "Armor's holding. Ribs probably cracked. Nothing new." They burst into the auxiliary hangar, a vast, hollow void filled with drifting crates and collapsed machinery. The maintenance airlock glowed faintly at the far end. They ran. Suddenly. Slam. A replicated dropped from the ceiling, landing between them and the exit. It straightened, head tilted unnaturally. "Hostiles. Eliminated." Marshall fired, but the creature darted aside with reflexes no human could match. It lunged. Marshall braced. A shot rang out. The replicated jerked violently as a plasma bolt punched through its skull, liquefying synthetic tissue. Danny lowered her prototyped sidearm, the barrel steaming. "Don't thank me yet, company's coming." More replicated flooded into the hangar, crawling along walls, dropping from support beams, charging across the floor. Marshall grabbed Threx and shoved him toward the airlock. "Open it." Threx's claws shook as he keyed the panel. 2 seconds, 3, no, 4. Briggs fired suppressive bursts. Not fast enough. A replicated soldier sprinted forward, and Briggs tackled it, slamming his knife into its neck. Sparks burst as he severed some kind of internal conduit. The creature convulsed but grabbed him, dragging him down. Marshall fired, freeing Briggs. "Threx," he barked. The airlock hissed open. "Go!" Marshall ordered. Danny dragged Briggs through. Threx scrambled after them. Marshall backed into the airlock, firing nonstop. The replicated surged forward. And the airlock slammed shut. Marshall hit the purge control. The outer hatch blasted open, sucking debris and replicated into the void. The creatures clawed at the airlock window as vacuum tore them outward, their eyeless faces staring without fear. Then they were gone. Aboard the human shuttle. They floated back to their ship via tether lines. As soon as the hatch sealed behind them, Briggs ripped off his helmet, gasping. Danny collapsed against a wall. Threx fell to the floor, shaking uncontrollably. Marshall leaned against the bulkhead, breathing hard. "Okay. Someone explain what the hell those things were." Threx lifted his head. His voice was barely a whisper. "They are replicated an ancient weapon. A species that does not create, but copies. They seek the strongest warriors from every civilization. They emulate them. Perfectly." Marshall stared. "And they copied humans." "Long ago," Threx said. "Before the galaxy banned warfare. Before your species hid yourselves away from the outer conflicts." Danny rubbed her face. "So why are they back now?" Threx hesitated. Then. They never left. They merely waited for authentic human warriors to return. To update their template. Marshall felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Briggs looked up. "Sir, does this mean we just gave them exactly what they wanted?" Marshall didn't reply. Because he already knew the answer, the shuttle streaked through the outer sectors, engines straining as Marshall pushed the craft to its limits. Behind them, The shattered Valerix cruiser drifted lifelessly, yet something about its stillness felt deceptive, like a predator slowing its breathing before the next strike. Inside the cabin, tension clung to the air like static. Briggs sat hunched forward, armor cracked, breathing uneven but steady. Danny was pacing, her restless steps echoing against metal flooring. Agent Threx kept his back pressed to the wall, wide eyes locked on nothing. No one spoke for a long time. Then Danny broke the silence in her usual blunt fashion. "We need to call this in. Command has no clue what's out here." Marshall didn't answer immediately. His thoughts were circling the same grim conclusion over and over. They had encountered a replicated force. And survived. But the replicated hadn't been destroyed. They had adapted. They had scanned. They had learned. Finally, he turned to Threx. "You said the replicated are ancient. How ancient?" Threx's throat fluttered in fear. "Older than the Directorate. Older than your species' arrival in recorded interstellar archives. They are the ghosts of the first wars, the last remnants of civilizations long gone. Their purpose was simple: imitate the galaxy's most dangerous warriors to ensure victory." Briggs wiped a streak of dried blood from his brow. "And evidently humans made that list." Threx looked at Briggs as if he had asked whether space contained stars. "Your species topped the list." Danny crossed her arms. "But why impersonate humans? Why now?" Threx shivered. "Because the replicated do not merely imitate bodies. They imitate behaviors, strategies, instinct, and..." Marshall pressed. "And," Threx whispered, "they needed authentic human combatants to update their templates. To learn what humanity has become. What you are capable of after centuries of peace." Marshall's jaw clenched. "They watched us," he said. "Studied us inside that cruiser." "Yes," Threx whispered. "And now they will replicate your modern tactics. Your weapons proficiency. Your adaptability." "And then?" Briggs asked softly. Threx looked down. "Then they will continue their ancient directive. War. Endless, perfect war." Marshall felt the cold truth settle inside him. "So we didn't walk into a trap." Danny understood it at the same moment. "We were the trap." Incoming transmission. A sharp beeping cut through the air. Danny rushed to the console. "Multiple signatures behind us," she reported. "Fast. Too fast." Marshall stood beside her. "Replicated?" "No," she squinted. "These are organic. Biological signatures inside ships. Alien ships." Threx bolted upright. "Valerix reinforcements. They follow all dread signals." Marshall swore. "They're jumping in blind. If they see what we saw." Danny finished the sentence. "They'll assume we did it." Briggs shook his head. "We need to warn them." "No," Threx gasped. "You do not understand. The Valerix fear humans more than you realize. If they discover replicated soldiers wearing human faces, they will not approach. They will not investigate. They will withdraw entirely." Danny blinked. "That's good, isn't it?" No, Threx's voice was a tremor. "They will assume the worst-case scenario, that humanity has resurrected the ancient warriors. They will report it to the Directorate. And the Directorate," Marshall finished grimly, "will likely preemptively strike Earth." A long, heavy silence filled the cabin. Danny's jaw clenched. "So either we tell them the truth and start a galactic war, or we let them misinterpret the situation and start a galactic war." Briggs exhaled. "Perfect." Marshall didn't hesitate. "We disable the Valerix ships." Threx flinched. "You can't be serious." "We're not destroying them," Marshall said. "We just keep them from getting close enough to report anything." Danny smirked faintly. I like the part where we don't blow up innocent aliens. Briggs stood. We can scramble their sensors. Blind them. Marshall nodded. Do it. A dangerous gambit. The shuttle arced around a tumbling asteroid. Ahead, 3 Valerix cruisers snapped into real space, forming a wedge formation. Their weapons were not powered, but their shields were up. Danny loaded a pulse drone. Sensor scrambler is hot. Marshall lined up the targeting reticle. Fire. The drone streaked through the void and detonated in a burst of electromagnetic energy. Invisible waves rippled outward, flooding the Valerix cruisers with static interference. Threx stared in shock. You disabled an entire squadron with a single device. Danny shrugged. We've had practice confusing aliens. Briggs checked the scanners. They're losing sensor cohesion. Their NAV systems just went into safe mode. Marshall angled the ship away. Good. They won't get close enough to see the replicated. Threx sank into his seat. You don't understand what you've just done. Marshall looked at him sharply. We prevented a misunderstanding. That's it. Threx shook his head. No. You prevented a report. No Valerix captain will ever send a partial or corrupted message to the Directorate. They will assume the threat was too great to describe. Danny raised an eyebrow. Meaning what? Meaning, Threx whispered, that when they return home, they will declare the entire sector forbidden. They will warn others to avoid it. And they will reference humans as the reason, alleging that your combatants were unspeakable. Without meeting us? Briggs asked. Threx nodded. The Valerix fear what they do not understand. Marshall exchanged glances with his team. So this is why no alien ever reports human combatants. Because they believe doing so risks provoking something worse. Threx swallowed. Exactly. The replicated return. Alarms blared again. This time Danny's face drained of color. Sir, we have a tail. A big one. Marshall rushed to her side. A replicated warship, sleek, angular, and unmistakably predatory, burst from hyperspace behind them. Its design was a twisted imitation of human naval engineering, but stretched, sharpened, perfected. Briggs read the data stream. They're locking onto us. Threx's pupils contracted in terror. They want the final piece. They want your ship, your tech, to complete their template. Marshall didn't hesitate. Full thrust. Evade. The shuttle shook violently as the replicated ship opened fire. Beams of pale white light sliced through nearby asteroids, turning stone into vapor. Danny gripped her controls. We can't outrun them. Marshall took the helm. I'm not trying to outrun them. Briggs stared. Sir? Marshall pointed ahead. I'm taking us back to the Valerix cruisers. Danny realized what he intended. You're using the aliens as cover. Marshall nodded. If the replicated fire on the Valerix ships, the Directorate will realize the threat isn't us, it's them. Briggs exhaled. And if the replicated don't take the bait? Marshall's hands tightened on the controls. Then we make sure they do. The final maneuver. The shuttle dove directly between the Valerix cruisers. The replicated ship followed, too fast, too focused on its prey to adjust its trajectory. Danny triggered the emergency beacon. The signal blared on all frequencies. Threx panicked. Are you insane? They will think you are attacking. No, Marshall replied. They'll think something far worse is attacking. The replicated ship emerged behind them, weapons glowing. For the first time, the Valerix saw it. And froze. Their comm channels burst to life with panicked alien voices. The replicated fired again, striking one cruiser's shields. The Valerix ships responded instantly, launching volleys of energy blasts, locking onto the monstrosity hunting the humans. Marshall turned to his team. Now they know. Danny nodded. And they'll report the truth. Threx looked stunned. But the Directorate will ask what drove the Replicated to awaken. Marshall met his eyes. And the Valerics will answer, we don't know. But it wasn't the humans. Threx blinked. Briggs smirked. Meaning we get to walk away. Danny corrected him. Meaning we get to walk away, for now. Marshall angled the shuttle toward the jump point. Let's finish this. The replicated ship reeled under the combined fire of the Valerics cruisers, then twisted into hyperspace, retreating. As the Valerics regrouped, Marshall opened a final message on an encrypted human channel. Human combatants encountered hostile replicated forces. Mission completed. Returning home. He paused. Then added. Recommendation: cease all further exploration of this sector. For everyone's sake. The message sent. The shuttle entered the jump corridor. Stars stretched into white lines. And for a moment, just a moment, the galaxy was quiet. Epilogue: Why aliens never report humans. Across the Valerics fleet, shaken officers gathered in hushed panic. Their scans were corrupted. Their ships disabled. Their crews terrified. And within their reports, every captain demanded the same thing. Do not engage human combatants. Do not report encounters unless absolutely required. Do not provoke them. Not because humans were monsters. Not because humans were the threat. But because the true danger ancient, adaptive, and unstoppable wore human faces. And the aliens knew one terrible truth. Reporting humans meant acknowledging them. Acknowledging them meant drawing their attention. And drawing their attention meant doom. So the galaxy quietly agreed. If you ever encounter human warriors, you forget it. You never file the report. You never speak of it again. Because somewhere in the dark, the replicated were still watching. Still learning. Still waiting. And the galaxy prayed humanity never discovered what had been done in its name.